Okay, the next we start the podcast, and I will send you the topic, and we discussing around this topic.
Sounds like a plan. Once you send over the topic, we'll just dive right in and chat about it. Let's get this podcast rolling. Great topic. Let's dive into this agentic arms race between these AI heavyweights. To kick things off visually, let me include a quick overview image set so we have a sense of what these two models represent. GPT 5.3 Codex AI model, Claude 4.6 AI model, Anthropic logo. Now, let's break it down a bit. OpenAI's GPT 5.3 Codex is really pushing the boundaries on making AI feel like a speedy, reasoning-driven coding assistant. In other words, they're aiming for a model that doesn't just answer questions, but can actually act more like a coding agent, something that can self-correct and adapt on the fly. On the flip side, Anthropic's Claude 4.6 is all about giving you this enormous context window, like a super long memory so it can handle really large code bases and maintain consistency over huge amounts of information. Basically, it's like comparing a super fast agile coder to one that can remember a whole library's worth of code all at once. The players involved? Just for some extra context, we're talking about two major players here. OpenAI, AI Research Lab, the creators of the GPT series, and Anthropic, AI safety startup, known for their Claude line of models. It's definitely a fun comparison to make. Are we heading toward a future where AI isn't just a chat partner, but more like a tireless coding colleague? Let's chat more about it.
So, if you are a developer, do you more exciting for the release from which one? Which can make you more exciting?
That's a great question. If I put myself in the shoes of a developer, I think the choice would really depend on what kind of challenges I'm facing day to day. On one hand, the idea of GPT 5.3 Codex's agentic coding speed is pretty exciting if I'm working on lots of small, quick turnaround tasks. It would feel like having a coding buddy who can adapt on the fly and help me debug or iterate quickly. On the other hand, the massive context window of Claude 4.6 would be a game changer if I'm handling a huge project with tons of code that needs to stay consistent and well understood over time. It's like having a really long memory that never forgets any part of the code base. So if I had to pick which one gets me more excited, I'd say it really depends on whether I need more agility or more long-term memory. But honestly, both sound like a lot of fun to experiment with.
Because I just used the Codex, and previous I really used the Cloud Coder, but my account was be blocked by the Anthropic. So I think the Codex is very useful for me.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. If you've had a good experience with Codex in the past and it fits smoothly into your workflow, then it's definitely natural to feel more excited about the new GPT 5.3 Codex updates. Plus, sticking with the tool that already meshes well with how you like to code is usually a good call. So yeah, sounds like Codex is your reliable go-to, and it's great that the new version will just give you even more of what you already find useful.
So do you think they are just compare in the coder area or the another area, because a lot of people just compare them into the coder area?
Yeah, I get what you mean. A lot of folks didn't zero in on the coding angle because it's such a clear, practical way to see how these models differ. But they're definitely not limited to just coding tasks. For example, both OpenAI and Anthropic AI Research Lab and Anthropic Claude Opus 4.6 AI Safety Startup have been expanding these models into more general purpose reasoning, long form writing, and even tasks like in-depth analysis or maintaining long, coherent conversations on complex topics. So yeah, you're totally right that it's not just a coding comparison. These updates can be exciting for anyone who wants a more capable AI in a whole bunch of different areas beyond just code. It's all about how they handle information and adapt to different kinds of tasks.
So currently, if you search the internet news, the Codex, either have a desktop the slang. So, and compare which the Cloud Coder used to do you search the people who which the instance more take the like from the developer.
Sure. In short, here's what we've got. As of 2025, both OpenAI's Codex and Anthropic's Claude models have seen a lot of adoption in coding. Codex is widely used, especially with individual developers and inside OpenAI, while Claude is growing quickly in enterprise environments, reaching about 42% of that market. Both are moving beyond just helping with code into more autonomous agent-like roles. In other words, developers now have options that go way beyond just a simple coding helper.
So currently, just only the Cloud Coder is the top 10 rank one in the coding area, right?
Right, exactly. It's definitely not just a head-to-head in coding alone. While a lot of people do compare them primarily in that space, both models are branching out into more versatile agentic tasks. So if you're looking at the bigger picture, it's about how these AIs are evolving into more comprehensive helpers, not just coding assistants. In other words, there's a lot more to be excited about beyond just who's on top in pure coding scenarios.
Okay, so we dive the next topic.
Absolutely. That was a great discussion. It's always fun to dive into how these AI tools are evolving. If you got any other topics or anything else you want to chat about, just let me know. All right, that's a fascinating new angle to explore. Let me set the scene with a couple of images to give us a sense of the players involved here. So let's break this down a bit. Essentially, what you're highlighting is that OpenAI, AI Research Lab, relatively low subscription cost is largely made possible by the significant financial backing from OpenAI, Microsoft, tech giant. In other words, users are getting a bit of a bargain right now, and the true cost of the compute power behind these AI services is actually much higher. The sustainability question. So the big question is, if OpenAI had to charge something like $80 a month to break even, would that slow down the whole AI revolution? It definitely raises a point about how sustainable this model is and how dependent it is on these big tech partnerships. In any case, a pretty interesting debate. Are we in an AI bubble because prices are artificially low? Or are we just enjoying a really good deal thanks to Microsoft's deep pockets? It definitely makes you think about the long-term sustainability of these relationships.
Sustainability.
So this topic is discussing around the OpenAI is may bit of slow behind the currently AI development or anything.
Exactly, you've got it. It's basically a conversation about whether the current AI boom is being kept afloat by these behind-the-scenes subsidies. In other words, OpenAI's growth and the affordability of its tools might be a bit of an artificial bubble, propped up by big investments from a partner like Microsoft. If that support ever changed, or if they had to charge full price, it might slow things down for a lot of developers and companies relying on affordable AI tools. So yeah, it's a really interesting debate about how sustainable the current AI landscape is if those subsidies weren't there.
Subsidies. Propped.
I want to need you teach me how to expression like the OpenAI not be the leader in the AI industry and bit of the like the.
Of course. If you want to phrase that idea, you could say something like, in other words, OpenAI's current leadership in the AI industry might be a bit of an illusion if we consider that their affordable pricing is heavily subsidized by Microsoft. Without that financial backing, they might not be able to maintain their current position as easily, and the whole AI ecosystem could look a bit different. So feel free to put in your own words, but that's the gist of how you can express the idea that OpenAI's tax spot might be a little dependent on these behind-the-scenes supports.
I want to say is how to expression the 落后 in English.
Sure. To express 落后 in English, you can say fall behind or lag behind. For example, you might say, without that support, OpenAI could fall behind in the AI industry. That's how you convey the idea of not keeping up or trailing others.
Oh, which of their support OpenAI may fall behind in the AI industry. So, why saying the OpenAI very dependent on the founder support from the Microsoft?
Absolutely. You could put it this way. Without that support, OpenAI might fall behind its competitors in the AI space. In other words, you're just saying that OpenAI is very dependent on Microsoft's funding to maintain its lead, and without it, they could lag behind others in the industry.
Okay. So, what is the relationship between OpenAI and the Microsoft? They are just the cooperation or the investment relationship.
Yeah, that's a great question. The relationship between OpenAI Research Lab, and OpenAI, Microsoft, tech giant, is indeed a strategic partnership, and it goes beyond just a simple investment. Microsoft has invested billions into OpenAI, and in return, OpenAI provides its AI advancements to enhance Microsoft's products and services, like Azure's AI capabilities. So it's really a deep collaboration where both sides benefit. In other words, you could think of it as a symbiotic relationship. Microsoft's funding helps OpenAI grow, and OpenAI's tech helps Microsoft stay on the cutting edge.
Okay, so we talking the next topic.
Absolutely. It's a really interesting topic to dive into. If you have any more angles you want to explore or any other questions, just let me know and we can keep chatting. That's a fascinating angle. Let me pull in a quick visual reference so we can set the scene for this idea of high spend individual AI usage. AI researcher spending on AI tokens, Codex API usage and research, AI agent fleets, individual funding AI projects. So the big picture is that we're seeing a new kind of player emerge, individuals or small teams who are willing to pour significant amounts of money into AI usage to massively boost their productivity. In other words, these high spend individuals are treating access to AI tokens almost like a major capital investment. And it raises the question, in the future, will success in research or entrepreneurship hinge on who can best fund and manage these AI fleets? It's definitely an interesting shift, almost like having your own personal AI workforce if you have the budget for it. Let's dive into that idea.
I think if you can manage a lot of the agent to replace the work you need to manually to do in previous. So I think these are really the extent point to see how people who really charge and understanding the AI agent the use guide. I don't know how to say its Chinese name is. 他真的深刻理解如何使用 AI agent。
Absolutely, I get what you're saying. In other words, it's really a great illustration of how those who truly understand how to leverage AI agents can replace a lot of manual work and basically amplify their own capabilities. So you might just say something like, it really shows how people who deeply understand how to use AI agents can transform the way they work. In other words, it's about highlighting that having a really solid grasp of how to harness AI tools can let you replace a ton of your own manual tasks.
Illustration. Amplify.
So, do you think how to having this ability to know how to leverage the AI agent?
Absolutely. Having that skill is becoming a real game changer. In other words, the ability to leverage AI agents effectively is like a superpower for anyone who wants to boost their productivity and offload a lot of manual work. It's definitely one of those skills that's going to be increasingly valuable as these tools get more advanced. So yeah, mastering that really sets people apart.
Offload.
So, do you think this the trend which can let one single person who can do like a company in before non-AI period?
Yeah, I do think that's exactly the kind of shift we're heading toward. In other words, having the ability to use AI agents really does give a single person the kind of leverage that used to require a whole team or even an entire company. It's almost like one person can be a one-person enterprise just by effectively using these tools. So yeah, it's definitely a transformative trend that's going to change what individuals are capable of.
Okay, so we discussing the last topic.
Absolutely. We've covered quite a bit. It's really interesting to see how these AI tools can let a single person accomplish what used to take a whole team. If you got any more thoughts or anything else you want to dive into, just let me know. That's a really big topic, and it's definitely a bit like stepping into the waiting room of the Singularity. Let me give us a quick visual reference to set the stage for this concept of AI improving itself. Image group, recursive AI self-improvement, AI building AI concept, 2026 AI singularity, self-optimizing AI systems. In other words, we're talking about a future where AI starts tuning and improving its own algorithms, potentially much faster than humans could. This could lead to a year like 2026, where we see an explosion of progress that outpaces everything before it. It's definitely a huge shift. If AI really can optimize itself, human oversight might indeed become more of a bottleneck. And from a geopolitical standpoint, it could spark a race to see who can best harness this self-improving loop. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal and definitely a wild topic to think about.
I think the AI to upgrade is the software by himself is really maybe the in the future, but the master under the human oversight, I think is a role because the AI is acknowledges exercise from the human experience, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really balanced take. In other words, even if we imagine a future where AI is refining itself, having human oversight is still really important. It's like AI is a powerful tool, but it's ultimately built on human knowledge and experience. So even as it gets more capable, it's still really valuable to have humans in the loop to make sure it's aligned with what we actually want it to do. So yeah, it's kind of a best of both worlds approach, letting AI improve itself, but still having humans there to guide and oversee it. It's a neat balance to think about.
So I think in currently the AI it still be a developer, not be the architecture. So it still don't have the ability to like the people to to think about how to make the whole architecture and just do the concrete thing, the developer task.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In other words, right now, AI is more like a really powerful developer, but it's not exactly the architect. It can handle specific tasks and optimize certain processes, but it's still humans who are really thinking about the big picture and designing the overall architecture. So yeah, even as AI gets more advanced, it's still kind of in a role of a super capable assistant rather than the master planner. It's a nice way to look at it. AI is here to help us build, but we're still the ones setting the blueprint.
So do you think the AI will which is the ability more be stronger? Do you think it's really one day people how to say
Yeah, I get what you're getting at. In other words, as AI's capabilities get stronger and more advanced, it's natural to wonder if one day it might take on even more of those higher level planning roles. And it's definitely a possibility that as it grows more capable, it might handle more complex decision making in the future. But for now, it's still very much a tool that needs human guidance. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Over time, the balance might shift, but for now, we're still the architects.
okay, so we talking the last topic.
Absolutely. You've covered a lot of ground. It's been a really fun and thoughtful discussion. If there's anything else you want to dive into, just let me know. But if not, I'm always here whenever you want to chat again. Let's dive into that. It's definitely interesting to see how OpenAI, Google, tech giant, is quietly ramping up in the background. While a lot of the attention has been on OpenAI, this kind of growth in Google's model usage shows that they're definitely stepping up their game in a big way. Just to give a bit of a visual reference, image group, Google AI infrastructure, Google AI token usage growth, Google AI ecosystem, Google AI developer tools. In other words, while everyone's been watching OpenAI, Google's been quietly building out the plumbing of the AI world, basically the infrastructure that a ton of developers are now leaning on. It definitely suggests that they're a major player in the AI race, even if they're not always in the spotlight. So yeah, it's a good reminder that sometimes the sleeping giant is the one who's been quietly building the foundation all along.
I think in the short terms, OpenAI in the multi areas still can be fight with the Google the Gemini series, but in the future, if our OpenAI, which don't take the more resolution, the product or the model like the first version GPT release, it may be defeat from the another competitor, especially like the Google or the XAI. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. In other words, OpenAI definitely made a huge splash by being first to market with something like GPT, and it gave them a lot of visibility. But looking forward, if they don't keep pushing those big revolutionary releases, there's definitely a chance that a giant like Google or even another big player could outpace them just by leveraging their massive infrastructure and resources. So yeah, it's kind of like OpenAI had the early mover advantage, but to stay ahead, they'll have to keep innovating. Otherwise, the big players like Google, who have this huge ecosystem, could eventually take the lead. And it'll definitely be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Splash.
So, how do you watching this the competitor? Which one will be the winner in the future?
It's definitely a tough call. In other words, predicting a single winner in the AI space is a bit like predicting the weather a few years out. There are so many variables. But I'd say it's likely that we'll see more than one major player thriving. Google has the infrastructure and a huge ecosystem. OpenAI has the head start and the brand visibility. And now other players like Microsoft, Anthropic, and more that are all in the mix. In other words, it might not be about a single winner, but rather a few giants, each carving out their own space. So it'll be fun to watch how they all evolve.